Alex, I appreciate you being here. And you just said something right before we got started that, driven to win, that's the show. But in order to win that, in your opinion, you gotta have people. You're kind of this people leader, dynamic person, but why have you come, locked and loaded with this zero chance you're gonna win without people? What makes you say that?
Having lived it and breathed it for many years and been on the recipient end of a lack of a good leader or a leader that is driven by results only at all costs, I understand the consequences, and truly believe, having lived it, that if you don't have a team that has your back and are performing at their best, then we're leaving money on the table, we're leaving ideas on the table, and to grow a business like I've been trying to do for the last 10 years, you're just getting in your own way if your people don't have your back. And I truly believe you can't win without people. I hope you agree you can't win without customers. And if you don't treat your people right, they're not going to treat your customers right. And then you're leaving revenue and growth and profitability on the table. So, a winning company needs a winning team.
That's right. Yeah. The only thing that crossed my mind, I was on the show here, I don't know, probably 2 months ago with an AI kind of specialist, and he probably would have been like, actually, I'm trying to build the first $1 billion company without people. But I actually like how you filled it in with you still need customers, which are people. And so we I've said for a long time, and this kind of goes along with Gathering the Kings being a community for entrepreneurs, but I truly believe that anything you want in life can be found or is found in another person. And that's obviously a relationship, the result of a business, or the helping hand, or like truly whatever you're looking for. A lot of that is in your spouse, a lot of that is in our teams, a lot of those in our customers, whatever that might look like, but it's always another human, it feels like, right?
I, I go one step further versus a reframe from the use of the word human or person. I go soul. Like the each
Yeah.
My wife is a soul, my kids are a soul, my team members are a soul. And I think when you use that word soul, like the souls on my team, it just reframes you and what your obligation as a leader, as a business owner, is to ensure that those souls are looked after.
Yeah. I think that that's actually really sobering. One of my questions that I ask folks that kind of come through the process of wanting to join our community is, do they ever feel like the heaviness of making big decisions that impact people, right? And as business owners, we make decisions that impact, of course, our spouse and our kids and our future family, right? Our kids and grandkids, and but also our team members, their families, our community, our clients, their families, and it just kind of goes on and on and on. And it's like you start thinking about the impact of a single decision, and oftentimes for us entrepreneurs, it's like thousands, if not tens of thousands of people are impacted every single time we make a decision. And so when you say it like that, when you're like, no, these are just people I'm impacting, these are souls, it's like, oh, am I making a good decision? Am I being a good steward? Am I being a good leader? What does that do for you? Like that reframe, especially with clients that you've worked with, because you kind of described this like bad leader scenario where you're just a number and we're only out for results. How have you seen that type of leader get shifted by this, perspective of treating souls?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak to my own story. So we're 10 years old this year, which is a feat in its own right. So I'll pat myself on the back. 10 years in the making. It's the next 10 years that matter. But
Yeah, that's
I'll
right.
take the first 5 years of DX. I had 100% turnover of staff. We struggled, probably nearly two bankruptcies, and just an immense amount of challenge.
Well,
And it's interesting. I started DX with the purpose of wiping out workplace toxicity, and because of my own mindset and not seeing the team members as souls, I actually ended up being the person that I was trying to wipe out. I became that results driven, growth minded, win at all costs person trying to lead a business that's trying to not do that. I became that person.
yeah,
And it was in the exit interviews and the understanding of the unintentional consequences of having that heavy growth mindset of trying to build a huge business. I ended up being the person I was trying to wipe out. So the change came to that epiphany of, man, if you're going to lead the people first movement, you got to be people first. And just remember that through my action and my inaction and your inaction, all of us, right, listening to this podcast, through your action or inaction, you can either send someone home to their family, their friends, with a smile on their face, or through your action or inaction, you can send them home having to worry about you, worry about the business, sometimes crying. And we only have what, 4,000 weekends in the, on average, on our lives. It's short. None of those weekends should be spent having to worry about any of us on this podcast.
Yeah.
It's just a misjustice if we do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate the seriousness of that, and obviously the irony of you guys, like you said, being the people first movement, but you not being people first. What what have you seen, for the leaders right now? Because a lot of times leaders and entrepreneurs, especially ones that might be listening right now, they're just trying to like make it happen. And you kind of described the first 5 years as kind of that. You didn't say that, but a lot of times that's what I've seen in my experience, but and then also in several of our members is like it's not that they're not trying to take care of their people, but what they're really more focused on is just survival. And talk about how those things correlated together, like survival and maybe even just trying to like get by gets like, the
Yeah.
overlook to like being a good person and taking care of people.
Yeah. Let me just, anyone listening, it's hard to focus your time and energy on culture and effective leadership when you're struggling to run a business. It's hard, right? We only have so much energy, and if you're saying yes to this, you got to say no to something. We just can't do everything. And I agree. The first 5 years was survival, but it was at a cost to both my family and all the families of those team members that came through my business.
Right.
And it's interesting you use the word survival. Not much has changed in 300,000 years. We've just swapped out saber-tooth tigers for bosses and you lot listening, right? My question, of course, is do your team see you as a saber-tooth tiger and are fearful of you, or do your team see you as the safe blueberry that they can eat and therefore do their best work and be their best selves?
Yeah.
But it's interesting that survival, we're just survival creatures.
Yep.
Um, our brain is a survival machine, and it's the unintentional consequences of not managing your survival machine that can lead to bad leadership, ineffective leadership, poor teamwork, collaboration, all the things that enable us to survive as a business. If your team are in survival mode and in fear mode, they can't help you. And I think that's the biggest problem. I can't solve all the problems as an entrepreneur. I started a business. I've got some insight, mostly through the mistakes that I've made. But at the end of the day, I need my team to be speaking up early, speaking up often. I need them to tell me when I screw up. I need them to tell me when I'm doing things right, so I do more of it. I need them to come with ideas that challenge the status quo, so I can innovate and create more stuff. But they're only going to do that when they're not in survival mode.
Right.
So I make it as simple as possible. It's what can we do as entrepreneurs, owners, and leaders to create an environment where we rip out that fear and people can step in, step up, and lead from whatever seat that they're in. But it goes back. So that's hard when you're running the business, in the business. You don't have the time,
Right.
or your brain's telling you that anyway, to actually work on the people.
Yeah.
Because if you're not working on the people, they're not going to work for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a it's a catch 22 when you really think about it. But for the ones that have a business where they know that maybe they're not in survival mode any longer, but and they know that people are important, but they don't know where to start. You kind of mentioned already what I would call a lot of soft skills. And in your book, Care, it's kind of funny here. It's like it's nothing about the cuddly type of care, which I love that line. But care stands for clarity, autonomy, relationships, and equity. I want you to talk about these because you kind of just, along with what you kind of toted off several kind of like EQ type things that a leader needs to have in order to care about people. And some of these are kind of right into that. And so clarity, autonomy, relationships, equity. Let's talk about how that applies to the person who's maybe not in survival mode any longer, but they're listening right now going, I know that I need to up level my team. I know that I need to take good care of people. I'm a little bit confused on how to do that.
Yeah. And I love the reframe, because I agree. There is nothing soft about leadership, right? Aside from parenting, which I've got a 7-year-old and a 6-year-old, that's challenging. But leading my team is probably just as challenging, right? Humans are challenging. We are all wonderfully unique. So I definitely, I always try and reframe this when I'm talking to leaders and walking them through, look, there's nothing soft about leadership. So I agree, there's nothing cuddly about care. It's the hard stuff. We call care the human skills to get the hard stuff done. So clarity, autonomy, relationships, and equity. The book is called, and Care to Win. That's our platform. Because as we talked about at the start, you're less likely to win, like whatever you're trying to win at, unless people have your back. And I just call that trust. I hope you agree. Nothing good happens in a personal relationship with friends, kids, your wife, your partner, or in a team without trust. I think trust is that foundational element for amazing things to happen. And when it's lacking, I call lack of trust the biggest expense on a P&L that no one talks about.
That's right.
Yeah, so trust, foundational, non-negotiable, I'd say. So clarity, autonomy, relationships, and equity is essentially, as a leader, how I build trust. And just so that you know, and we all know, there's no net neutral when it comes to trust building. Through my action or inaction, I'm either building it or I'm eroding it. There's no neutral. Every email I send, every time I talk to someone, every time I don't talk to someone, every time I do something, I'm literally building it or eroding it. So care is something so darn simple that hopefully we can all remember it. Going back to survival, these are just the 4 dimensions of survival. So just think about this in the old days. If we didn't know where it was safe to eat, it meant death. If we didn't know who was on Saber-Tooth duty that night, we'd all get eaten. So that clarity, we all crave it. And as a leader, when I starve my team of the clarity that they need, their brains go into fear mode, threat circuitry's triggered, and they're going to shut down and not perform at their best. So it's simple. We've got to provide our teams the clarity that they crave. Same with autonomy. So autonomy is just a simple brain craving. If there was a T-Rex attack, I felt more comfortable if I was to run into the cave myself. If you were carrying me, I'm like, that doesn't feel very safe. And we call that micromanaging, when you try and tie the shoelaces of your team versus let them tie their own shoelaces. If you try and tie them too much, they get a little bit upset because, again, the threat circuitry gets triggered. They don't like to be controlled. Everyone wants to have that element of agency and control. So that autonomy is something that they crave. And again, if you steal it from them, threat circuitry is triggered, fear, not going to trust you, problem. You give them the right levels of autonomy, holy crap, brain spark up, perform at their best, they'll have your back, trust is built. Relationships, going back to the tribe, if my attributes, values, and as a human, I didn't feel like I belonged on this tribe, my brain's telling me I'm going to get excommunicated and kicked off the tribe. And if I'm kicked off the tribe, I'm out in the jungle on my own, I'm going to get eaten. So we all crave this sense of community and sense of belonging. And again, if you steal it from someone, threat circuitry is triggered, see the fear, not going to trust you, problem. If you create that sense of purpose, people feel valued, you feel like they got to know them for who they are, they feel like a sense of belonging, they'll trust you, good things happen. And last one, equity. The definition of this one, I know it's a little of a touchy subject right now, equity, but we've made it real simple. Our definition of equity is adapting to the unique needs of every person. That simple. Like, you're unique, I'm unique, every listener here, we're all weird and wonderful in our own certain way. And when I adapt to you and I treat you how you want to be treated versus how I want to be treated, brain spark up, trust is built, amazing things happen. So care is just simply, if you care for your people with basic reciprocity, they'll care back. And that's sort of the basics of care.
Yeah, I love the intentionality between each one of those. The skills underneath to be able to develop and provide care. What does that list look like? I mean, does someone just all of a sudden start, oh great, I'm going to provide clarity, and I'm going to start giving autonomy and not tying your shoelace anymore? And or are there other skill sets that they can start building on now, or that they should be building in the process of becoming a good leader to be able to develop care?
Yeah, yes, good question. So the care equation is any engineers will like this, I hope. It's simple. So think of the linear effect. So clarity. So take a inside look at Alex. I'm an entrepreneur, like many of us on this call. So I tend to give a lot of autonomy because most entrepreneurs do. I have a very low preference for clarity because I can take a sentence and I can roll with it. Like, I'm cool with that. But my COO man, that one sentence would confuse the crap out of her. So I got to provide her a 10-page document when I only need a sentence. Maybe she needs way less autonomy than I'm giving her. She likes her shoelaces to be tied a little bit, but she also wants some help. So clarity, the care equation is clarity when you have the right levels gives you the ability to give autonomy, because if you try and give autonomy without clarity, that's chaos and confusion. So you can't really give autonomy. This is the dichotomy for entrepreneurs that they can't get to grips with, is high clarity, high autonomy. Clarity is not stealing autonomy. Clarity is the what, autonomy is the how, relationships is the who, and equity is the glue. So it's linear. Clarity gives you the opportunity to give autonomy. When you give autonomy, it gives you the time and energy to build relationships. And when you build relationships, you can be equitable. And one of those does not work without the other. It's a very linear approach, bottom up, top down.
Yeah.
To answer your question though, just it's habits, man. I'm a big fan of James Clear and Atomic Habits and Charles Duhigg and Power of Habit. Or it doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be. It's clarity. So in every meeting, my objective is, what does success look like? It's almost like the four W's. Why are we here? What do we need to accomplish? When do we need to get this done by? And who needs to be involved? So clarity is just answering those four questions. Any ambiguity in the answer to those questions between you and your team, the more variance, the more dissonance, the more performance issues you're going to have. So it's just hardwiring sort of the habits of clarity, making sure that you're on the same line, of the same page in every meeting. Because I hope you all agree, we all just run from meetings to meetings. When we're not clear of the result of those meetings, that causes clarity issues. So the habits of clarity is more about what, making sure we're on the same line, of the same page. The habits of autonomy, it's more about, I always say, you got two ears and one mouth, use them in that ratio. So the habits of autonomy is to ensure in every meeting you speak less than the person you're speaking to. Make sure that everyone has a voice. Make sure that you're asking the what, who, what, when questions and not the why questions. So the habits of autonomy is to ask more than you actually make statements. And when you do that, you actually end up giving autonomy. So it's the power of curiosity. The habits of relationships is, again, going back to just meetings, because this is really where the effective use of care is. It's in meetings with your team, with your clients, with your wife, with your partner. It's when you meet with someone, use these habits. Relationships is sort of connection before content, right? Don't get straight down to work. You need to have time in order to understand who's doing the work. So always being curious about the people on the other end, making sure that there's always connection time within meetings, and it's just not work, 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 work. And of course, having those one-on-ones and then them being about them, not about work. And equity is a byproduct of your ability to provide the effective levels of C, A, and R. Equity is a feeling. It's that notion of, I feel I have been adapted to by my boss. They're treating me how I want to be treated, and therefore I will perform at a much better expectation than if they didn't. So E is that output, and the C and the A and the R, the inputs.
Yeah, I love that. You said a couple of things. I mean, first off, all of this, they should hit a pause and rewind and at least listen to you at least two or three more times. You've given absolute gold here. But you've said a couple of things in two different pieces of the show so far that I want to bring together and ask you a little bit more of. You just talked about relationship and how, we can, basically spend the time there past the transaction, right? And we're doing that obviously with our team members, our spouse, all the relationships that we have, but specifically kind of keeping this to the business, because I see so many entrepreneurs that are results driven. Obviously they're driven to win. They want to do big things, and for all intents and purposes, a team member is a part of the equation. And not to say that that's wrong, but what you're suggesting is that it goes beyond the equation, and then we see them as a person and even as a soul, and we start to create these other sticky factors with them through our relationship. And then tied to that at the beginning, you said that this negative leader who we don't want to be kind of treats people like a number. It's that cold transactional type of leadership where it's expectations about results only. And I remember working in an environment like that where, I mean, I'm a high performer. I'm not necessarily needing a lot of attention or feel goods or pats on the back. Like, I'm going to win because I want to win, right?
Yeah.
But this was my first experience being a high performer in an environment where zero were given. Nothing. And it was literally all transactions. And even when you did win, it wasn't like, I mean, it was kind of celebrated, but it was definitely more of the expectation. Which I, as a entrepreneur and winner, I'm like, man, how many times have I created that environment in my own space? Like, how many times have I done that to myself?
Yeah.
Where the expectation is to win at the highest level, no excuses whatsoever. And so I remember being in this environment where I absolutely was just a number. And I was like an executive and I was just a number. It was crazy. And what I learned from that was like, man, I don't necessarily know if I need to, go outside every 2 minutes and sing kumbaya, but like just a little bit of human interaction and some relationship and maybe some soul to this thing, like you described, Alex. And so it's like all these things together because the listener right now is probably a high driven entrepreneur. They've probably done the same things that you and I have just talked about doing. How can they kind of jump past some of those things and go, okay, like I can see this soul, this person, and do things you were just talking about with the relationship, like really make it past the transaction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I love that. A number, not a soul. I'm gonna use that, right? So just it's that total reframe from humans are numbers and to humans are souls. As hearing you speak, just a remember for all of us. So I'm a low C. I don't crave much clarity. I'm a high A. I crave a lot and I give a lot of autonomy. I'm a low R like you. I'm also built to win. I it's just part of my makeup. Most of us start a business because we want to win, and that's typically the makeup of someone who wins. Low C, high A, low R. To your point, though, just because I'm a low R doesn't mean I don't need a sense of connection. And to your point, when it's totally mitigated and there's nothing, you start to question your motives. You start to question, what the am I doing here?
Yeah.
But you still need a little bit. So just remember for all of us, it's not about you, it's about them. So we're here to lead the people first movement. To be people first is to be equitable, which is to adapt to the unique needs of every person. So it's just for me, it's just a conversation. It's every conversation. It's getting to know what the preferences are of your team. Like one of my team members is a very, very high C. So I'm ensure that in every interaction with that member that I am giving them the clarity that they need to perform at their best and to win. I'm a low C. I have to put a lot of energy into that. I'm a low R. I just love to get shit done. So I don't need much of that connection time, but there's people on my team who do. So, you know, whereas I'd spend 5 minutes with myself on relationships, I'm going to spend an hour with one of my team members who just needs way more. Now, again, it's going to cause me more energy to do that, but it's about treating them how they want to be treated. So, it's just ensure it's one of those biases in the brain where we tend to project some bias. We tend to project ourselves what we believe our preferences are on other people, and we assume that everyone wants lots of autonomy. They don't. Some want a small box. I want a big box. We project that everyone wants lots of clarity. They don't. So I think just go back to treat people how they want to be treated. I'm giving you the core components of trust and high performance, but it's not a one size fits all. And I think it's just a simple conversation. Hey, when you have this vocabulary, I think that's what care is. It's a vocabulary of leadership. And when we're all on the same page, most of our work is putting the language of care into the whole team so that in every conversation, like, do you have enough clarity? I'm glad you asked that question because no, I don't.
Right.
Am I spending enough time building relationships with you? Yeah, you're good, man. In fact, you could probably spend less and I'm still cool. Great. Didn't know that. So it's just a conversation. I think gives you the language to have really good conversations.
Yeah, that's awesome. My business partner with Gathering the Kings, Jake, he uses this treat people how they want to be, how you would want to be treated phrase, this golden rule, treat people how
Yeah.
you would want to be treated. And there's a book, I can't remember, but he phrases it all the time, but the platinum rule, how you should treat people how they want to be treated. And we use different surveys and stuff like that, personality traits surveys that they give us access. But I love how you're using your care system to be able to, basically categorize where people are so that I can know how to interact with them. Because again, to your point, and to this platinum rule as opposed to the golden rule, if I want to treat some people how they want to be treated as opposed to how Chaz wants to be treated, they might want higher relationship. They might want less autonomy. They might want more clarity, because very similar to you, it's like, well, I don't necessarily need that, or I do want a bunch of that, or, and we're not trying to just, spill what we desire on our team, but we're trying to meet them where they're at and actually show up for them, which is a whole another conversation about leadership, which is kind of flipped upside down, which is I'm going to do what's best for them as opposed to doing what's best for me and then having them serve me. Right? You want to talk about that for a second? Because that's a whole nother flip.
That's you just opened up a can of worms there, Chaz. so let's really depack that for a second. So let's go back to survival, machines, brain, and what gets in the way and what hinders our ability to do this stuff, right? So all this is all so simple, right? Care, 4 dimensions, piece of cake, treat people how they want to be treated. All of this seems so simple in theory, but hard in practice. Why? We've all got a brain. So again, brain's primary purpose is to keep me alive. Effective team work and building high performing teams is not about keeping me alive, it's about keeping my team alive. So brain, it's processing between 11 to 60 million bits of information every second. I'm sure most listeners here have at least 5 screens open, one for this, one for their email, one for social media. We're being bombarded with information, between 11 and 60 million bits of information. So brain's a threat scanning machine trying to keep me alive, scanning all this information, processing it. So to do that, it's created heuristics. So heuristics are just simple brain shortcuts to make quick decisions, to process all this information as quickly as possible so that I can continue to scan for threats. The negative effect of a heuristic is called a bias. There's about 188 biases. We just talked about one, the projection bias. A bias is just simply an assumption. It's an assumption about something. And it's these assumptions that get in the way of our ability to be people first and to adapt and to treat them how they want to be treated, because your brain's telling you, keep me alive. As a leader, my job is not to keep me alive, it's to keep the team alive and to get them to be high performing so that we kick ass and win. So these assumptions basically just get, if not tended to, are what unintentionally causes us, even with the best intentions, not to be effective leaders, and that trust is not where it needs to be, and toxicity is in its path. Let me give you a quick example. If I was to say the word ruler, what's ruler mean to you, Chaz?
Well, there's a couple different definitions of the word ruler, but obviously I'm going to go to the king, ruler, someone who's ruling over a people or governing.
Okay. So ruler to me is a metric ruler, right?
Right.
So if we were in a team meeting right now and I'm like, hey guys, can you go build me a ruler? Your initial reaction is, sure, easy, got it. Because you're making the assumption you know what a ruler is. I'm like, cool, they got it. We call that the illusion of agreement bias, when two groups of people unknowingly assume that they're on the same page, when in actual fact there's a dissonance between one word or group of words. That's the illusion of agreement bias. The law of least efforts. I go back to shoelaces. My brain's basically telling me it's quicker and easier to tie your shoelaces because of all these deadlines that are going on right now. And I have all the technical expertise as the entrepreneur than it is to let you tie your own shoelaces. Again, so that speed, that bias of quicker and easier. Proximity bias. We tend to coalesce and build more connections with the people next to us because it's quicker and easier than it is to actually engage, for example, a hybrid team. I'll spend more time with my Chicago team than I will with the person who's sitting in Oregon. And if I don't intentionally combat my bias of proximity, then that person will get left out. So there's 188 reasons why this stuff is really difficult if we don't manage our brain.
Yeah, that's incredible. The speed bias that you kind of went through. I'm sure every entrepreneur was going, "Oh no!" It's funny
Yeah.
because this is an ongoing thing with several of my teams. But speed is always a friend until it's not, right? And I loved how you kind of described. Naturally, I'm going to want to X Y Z as especially a high performer, and speed is going to be a big part of that. But I think if it's for the transaction, if it's for the win, and it sacrifices things that I also now know are important, then I'm blinded to the things that I'm either losing out on or losing altogether. And
We,
so,
we, we call that the rush to solve bias, Chaz, which is, as Einstein would say, if I got an hour to solve a problem, I'll spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes going to solutions. Our brain's telling us, screw that, let's go straight to solutions. And you end up missing opportunities to do other things and do things better when it's the biggest bias for entrepreneurs, I think, is the rush to solve bias. Or
oh
we
yeah,
tend to jump to conclusions and that speed versus actually look at perspective and all the greater things, and that law of least efforts bias also. I think the combination of those two really can hinder our ability to be even more effective.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just earlier today, even I was working with a consultant who's helping me kind of put together some information for one of our events, and I just wanted to get down to it and just like let's solve it. And he took me through this hour and a half long process, and we didn't even come close to even talking about the solutions because we did this prompt the prompter through ChatGPT, and we spent literally 90 minutes, and we haven't even developed the final prompt, let alone the actual solution of the thing that we're trying to solve. And I was like plucking my eyeballs out at the same time, recognizing how important this was and going, okay, I am going to submit to this because I totally see the, taking, 55 minutes to sharpen the axe and then 5 minutes to chop down the tree approach. I
Yeah.
see that, but man, is it tough here in the moment to like actually do it. It is tough, especially for entrepreneurs.
It is, and I love that story because it is your brain is saying, "Come on, man, let's get on with it. Let's go." And but you now the patience,
Yeah.
the patience. You'll get to. I think we spend a lot of our time in reactive mode as entrepreneurs because we're just fixing crap that we shouldn't have to fix. We're duplication of effort, rework, shit downstream that we could have fixed upstream, but to your point, we're just like, let's just go. It's rush, that rush. So
Yeah.
that's a big problem in our industry.
It's so interesting as this is kind of unfolding. I'm thinking about all these other circumstances. We do several roundtable type environments inside of our community, some virtual, some in person, boardroom type settings where we're, sharing about our businesses and our lives and going around the table and tearing things apart and building them back together. And it's so interesting to me how some of some individuals, and I can and I'm a huge observer. I'm a huge relationship guy now. I don't know if I was always, or maybe I was. I just didn't know how to articulate those things early on as a young man. But I watch everything. Like this podcast right now is killing me because we have to have upgraded material and equipment, and so I get to look at a camera and not your face. And so I keep like looking over here, catching your face, going like, okay, yeah, like I want to look at him, but I can think about being in these scenarios, and I'm watching people's faces and I'm watching people's body language because I think it tells a whole book of a story. And I'm watching this bias that you're talking about. Person in the hot seat is sharing. The person over here, or maybe multiple people, they already have the solution or what they think is the solution. And it's like it's exploding on the inside. And they do everything that they possibly can to just keep quiet or not walk out of the room.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started to see this, I'm like, okay, wow, like maybe this person's talking too slow, or maybe this is this really a dumb problem because they already had it solved like within a few minutes. But I've come to realize that that's not the case at all. And actually, a lot of those times, those guys are high performers, but their ability to not see the full picture, to get all the details, to be super curious, is actually starving them from better solutions, which is what you were just describing. They're solving problems so quickly and sometimes unnecessarily that it's actually causing more problems, right?
I couldn't agree more. One of our again going to high performing teams and winning. It's managing these biases that we're all hardwired with, and some of us manage them, some of us don't. But it's the okay. It's almost like the internal talk. Like I have this solution. Just slow down. It might not be the right solution, so let just keep it to myself. Let's get more clarity. I go back to clarity. Let's get more clarity so that I can challenge whether my own solution is actually the right solution. It's that again. I'll go back to the use of care and leadership. It's look. Let's not move to solutions until we are crystal clear. Let's define what crystal clear looks like. So to stop these solutions being bombarded in, we tend to jump to solutions and go straight into it when we don't have the clarity. I think we just got to slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that's my job as a leader is to slow the process down, combat my own bias and make sure that we're not jumping to solutions before we're crystal clear on what we're even solutioning in the first place. And
Yeah.
that's to your point. It's where so much time is wasted.
Yeah. It's crazy really to think about it because I mean, we've all done this, but the amount of is actually sad, really, when I think about my own history. How many times, because I was moving so fast, and I look at it now, it's like, okay, well, okay, would I have done it differently? Probably not. I've learned a bunch, but you solve so many problems so fast that I now actually believe that I'm the only one that can solve these types of problems, which then isolates me even further to bottleneck, right? And so not only am I the one solving quote unquote all the problems, I'm solving so many problems that aren't probably a real problem, or I'm actually creating some of these because I'm just moving so fast and not getting all the details. Um, yeah, I'm just like years and years, and probably millions of dollars gone, but this is the story.
But then, you've learned the hard way, the school of hard knocks, right? And I that's okay. So me too. And this goes to the importance of, when you take on that leadership position, whatever it is, whether it's a team of me, a team of two, brand new entrepreneur, or you're leading a larger team, these are leadership is learned, right? It's not a skill you were born with. Like,
Right,
would you get into a car, or would you get into a plane if you knew that the pilot didn't have sufficient training?
right,
I hope not. Would you let someone operate on you if you knew that the surgeon didn't have the necessary training?
right.
I hope no. Why do we let people operate on people or operate on souls without the necessary training? Right. That's it, all of these are just the unintentional consequences of not knowing. Imagine how much more we achieve if we would just slow down, spend some time developing ourselves as leaders to do this stuff, because we are not wired, we're not born with the ability to do this, to check our biases, to slow down, to ask questions, to not jump to solutions. This is all natural wiring, which is the opposite of actually what high performing teams do. They actually do the opposite of all the stuff that we've just talked about in the last 15 minutes. But we've done it because we've learned by our own mistakes. But to your point, how many millions and millions are wasted every second
Right.
because of that ineffective leadership, because no one knows. They just do the best that they can. And I just don't think doing the best you can is good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that phrase that, "Our leaders born," I know that is kind of like a topic that you kind of wrestle with. Excuse me, you just did a good job of kind of giving that. I think the same thing for entrepreneurs. I mean, there might be some like things that maybe you're more prone to, right? To leadership because of maybe as much, the little clarity or the high autonomy. But the truth is that all these are skill sets,
Yeah.
and we can learn all of them, and we can be proficient and master them over the course of time and effort towards these things. What, other than grabbing your book, which will be in the show notes, what's a great way for someone to kind of start building on these skill sets for them to be able to grow as a leader?
Um, I think it's being curious. We all have our limitations, and leadership is it's a journey. You never get there, right? You're never the perfect leader, and you never have a flawless team. So just step one, you never get there. It's that growth mindset of you're not there yet.
Yeah.
So number one, please, none of you. Ego is a culture killer. Ego is a leadership killer. Don't be that asshole. Ego. Don't think that you're the best thing since sliced bread. You're not. You're just human. So let go of that ego. I think that's step one. Growth. No one's born to lead. Leadership is a learned skill, like art, cooking, and golf. You can only ever get better. So step one, have that mindset. Well, with that mindset, then if I believe I can only get better, then spend every day, every week getting better, whether that's reading books, whether that's, I think the most purest and best way to improve is actually to engage your team and get feedback. It's a lost skill in the workplace of actually sitting down with someone and going, look, I'm trying to get better at clarity. So, I'll ask my direct reports. I'm trying to get better at clarity. I know I'm not providing you the best I could do, and I'd like to really sharpen this knife here. Can you give me some feedback on what I'm doing well and what I can improve on? I just think that in its purest, simplest sense is the way that all of us can get better every day. Your team experience you every single day, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I challenge you, don't answer this question, but how many of you intentionally, on a regular basis, whether it's weekly, daily, monthly, sit down to get feedback, specific feedback, not, hey, can you give me some feedback? Can I get some feedback on how I'm providing you clarity? Can I get some feedback on how I'm giving you the right levels of autonomy? can I get some feedback on my ability to build trust and relationships? What's working, what's not working? That is continuous improvement, right? It's go to war, just like the army after action reviews. You do it, you step back from it, you get the feedback, you learn from it, you do it again. How many of us have that as a mechanism for our how we run our businesses?
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, just slowing down enough to do that, right? And recognizing the power in asking those types of questions and then waiting for those answers. And on top of that, too, if the listener right now is thinking, "Well, my people wouldn't give me a direct answer, or wouldn't give, wouldn't be honest," then that might be the answer.
Well, give me a call, because that's my job's to rip out silence from teams. So if they don't give you an answer, well, what have you not done? You haven't built trust.
That's right.
So what's going on? Let's strip that back, because that when you build trust, people just give it to you. That's why my wife tells me how much I suck every day, because we trust each other. And do I get defensive? Hell no. I'm like, yeah, bring it on, man.
Yeah.
My kids trust me. That little microcosm of an environment is what we should have in a workplace, where people have the trust to speak up early, speak up often, and be transparent. And if you're not getting feedback all the time, you got a problem, right? If there's crickets in your team and they're not talking about what's working, what's not working, if there's not conflict, you got a trust problem. And if you've got a trust problem, man, you're leaving lots of money on the table.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this was probably 6 months or so ago. We did a short little call, on the 5 dysfunctions of a team from Patrick Lencioni or Lencioni. And Jake and I are both working genius certified, so we're kind of in his swirl a little bit. But this idea of trust really is a domino effect, really, and it's kind of hard to have the elite results that comes from a high performing team without it. I mean, it's just never going to happen. One, but then there's so many other things that happen, in that kind of cascade of effects
Yeah.
from trust.
Yeah, his triangle, right? The bottom of the triangle of the 5 dysfunctions. Go figure. Trust,
Yeah,
and that's why I love his work too. I'm a big fan. The Motive is my favorite book of his.
that's
But
awesome.
if you think about the bottom part of the triangle, trust,
Right.
well, then you put care underneath that. That's how to build trust, and trust essentially leads to accountability and high performing team. Go figure.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolf. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other grow.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Well, Alex, you've got this incredible system. Obviously, you've got the experience to be able to kind of, like you said, rip out the silence in the team and build trust. What's the best way? Like, if listeners right now they're drawn to you, get a hold of you. I'll give you that chance here in a second. But what's the best way that someone can interact with you? Like, if they have a team and and maybe it's not high performing yet, and they're thinking, if I reached out to Alex, maybe he could help me. What could that look like? Is that a you coming to them? Is that a virtual thing? Is that you working with a team? Like, what does it
Yeah.
typically look like when you're working with your clients?
Good question. So it starts with data, because usually when someone comes to us, Alex, I got this problem and my team aren't doing this, and I think it's this. Like, we don't have a vision, or we've got a clarity issue. We've got a relationship. I think it's relationships. As soon as I say the word "I think," I'm like, that's an assumption. So data, we have a validated diagnostic that comes with care. So each dimension has a set of questions that goes to all team members. We set it up to create that psychological safety, so that it breeds honesty with a system for how to do that. But really, that data, the diagnostic, then gives us a starting point of, woof, look at that question number 23. Look at that. It's scoring 3.2. The average should be about 4.5. that's probably the problem that is the problem we need to isolate. So we start with data. We really find out where's the biggest variance between what people get and what people need in those 4 dimensions with the specific questions.
Yeah.
When we find out that data, we then coach and work with both the leader and the team. We've got some experiential learning activities. We've got some coaches. We basically work it. We then do the data again after about 90 days. What tends to happen, that variance shifts, goes down, like, woohoo, we did it. But if you're saying yes to this, you're going to say no to something else. So then, oh my gosh, clarity is now an issue. Look, question number 2 popped up. Oh, okay, let's fix that. And what tends to happen is, if you think about the system that we've created, continuous improvement never stops. I think that in my industry issue is they go, let's fix this problem with training. And they do this one-off tick box crap.
We did it.
And what happens? Nothing changes, man. Looks good, feels good.
Right.
So it's got to be continual. So working with us is a continual system of continually using the data to isolate the problem, just fixing that particular problem with some coaching, giving them some tips, doing it every 90 days. We're big EOS fans, so we got the EOS system for our business. Yep. This is just EOS, but for the people stuff. Yeah. Collect the data, get your 90-day rocks, work on the rocks, get the data again, new 90-day rocks, but now on culture and leadership. So that's sort of our systemized approach to working with teams.
Yeah, I love that. I always like to try to give perspective, especially if it's something that, some of the listeners might be thinking about, reaching out to you for. Sometimes that's a gap, when people are like, man, I don't really know, so I appreciate you sharing a little bit of that. I think data is huge, especially for organizations that have people, a big team, even if it's just a team of 10, but 10, 20, 50, 150, data never lies. People often do, but data never does. So how can the listener reach out to you? How can they find you? Where can they follow you for more information?
Yeah, read the book, Care to Win. Check it out on Amazon. So Care to Win, Alex Draper, you'll find it. The book has a website. So if you want to find out more and just get curious, download a chapter and watch some of the videos. It's alex-draper.com. Follow me on LinkedIn. I think that's the best place. I post every day about all of this stuff. I'm just sharing information without any sales attached to it. So follow me on LinkedIn, Alex Draper at DX. And you can DM me there if you want to contact me. And if you're just curious about sort of the programs and what we do, it's dx-learning.com.
I love it. Well, Alex, you've been incredible. You've obviously got just some amazing tools. You know exactly what you're talking about. I've enjoyed this conversation. I hope that the listeners take you up on that. At least grab the book. The link for the Amazon purchase opportunity will be in the show notes for them to be able to just easily grab that. And I hope that they do. So thanks for being here, brother. Blessings to you and all that you've got going on here in 2025. Appreciate you being here, man.
So thanks for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation and good luck to you all out there.
Thank you for listening to Driven to Win. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.